Two-part question, if I may. You're looking at Stetson Bennett. The moment he arrived in Los Angeles and to where he is now, what are some of the things that impressed you upon him that you felt like he was able to gather and be a part of this team moving forward?
Well, I think that you're always trying to predict whether the I call it the superpowers, the skill set that he displayed in college, does it translate to the NFL? So we did get to see some of the mobility, the ability, to use that mobility within the pocket, move the chains, and he was a guy that was not necessarily, or I would say a little bit fearless sometimes in terms of trying to make a play. We did see some of that, like a lot of rookie QBs, not there yet, and the transition to the NFL can be humbling at times, and he's gone through that. But usually, if you can overcome those lessons, apply them, you have a good shot of evolving to whatever potential you might have.
And as far as his film study is concerned, obviously him picking up the offense, being in the same room as Matthew Stafford, what gave you all the confidence to say this guy can actually be a QB2 specifically moving forward with this team?
Probably a lot of the variables that I just discussed, and what I think what's probably different than preseason games versus our preseason practices. We're very vanilla in the games, right, to a fault, and it's very intentional of how vanilla, right, what Sean wants to put on tape in the preseason, because there has been evolutions, in our offense that he doesn't necessarily want to show. You see a little bit more of that in our practices, a lot more of that in our practices, a little bit more of that when we practice against teams. But point being is, if we ever had to get to Stetson at that point in time, there would be a game plan that would be put together that I think our coaching staff would sit down and we'd probably reduce some things. It'd be a different package than what Matthew can take into the game, and it'd be tailored a little more to what Stetson can do and less than what he can't do.
Thank you, Les.
Like everything, you never really want to get to your backup quarterback, but that is definitely possible in the NFL. Visions to not get there. And we're still guessing about Stetson a year from now.
Stu. Hey, Les, what made Kevin Dotson a trade target for you guys, and what do you think, or what is, I guess, your vision for him initially here?
I think that it started with he's been a starter in Pittsburgh. They drafted a good bit of OL. They signed some in let's call it unrestricted free agency. So you did know that they had a surplus of OL who had played in NFL games. And with the draftees coming in, they were a team that we targeted initially to monitor if we ever wanted to go in that direction. So, and then obviously you turn on the tape. He played at Pittsburgh. They're a fun team to watch. Their linemen play with an element of toughness. They like to run the ball. They like to go north and south. He's a bigger player. That helps in anchoring, especially, in the pocket. So I think initially we've got to get him up to speed. We've kind of tried to trade for him. Most of the preseason, they wanted to hold on to him to make sure that they got through, preseason healthy and didn't necessarily need them and still have the surplus that we thought they might have. So right now, let's get him up to speed, and then from that point, we'll see where he fits in and how, what ends up being our best five along the way.
And then sticking with the offensive line, I know Sean already touched on, the decision to waive Logan Bruss yesterday a little bit, but, in your mind, what does the path forward look like for him, and what would your vision for him be if he is able to make it back?
What we do know is, I know we hadn't announced it yet. We're still working through that. He did clear waivers. He does want to come back and be on practice squad with us. So obviously we didn't think Logan was there yet. The goal is to still try to get him there. I think from the start with Logan, he came in playing right tackle from Wisconsin. We moved him to guard. He got introduced to the NFL trying to block Aaron Donald while trying to learn a new position. That probably set him back a little bit than the ACL. Then because of some injuries, we moved him back to right tackle. So there's been a lot that's occurred with Logan. Now, what I can say is there's also been a lot that occurred with someone like Zach Thomas that we poached last year, and he may have handled that situation better than Logan, and it's one of the reasons we kept him. But don't want to give up on Logan yet. Jack that he wants to come back, because that's not easy. Like when we draft a player, release him, and what would be probably release a player that a little earlier than we would normally do. It's a lot easier for him to say maybe a new ecosystem, new environment's better for me. But I think he really liked what was going on here. Felt like this was the best place for him to have a shot of improving and getting to where he thinks he can be and where we think he can be.
Thank you.
Tyler.
Hi, Les. How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. Thanks for asking. So kind of two-part question here. Have you noticed Matthew Stafford not being able to really connect with his teammates? And as a GM, how do you kind of manage building a team each and every season and also being able to build camaraderie with your team and chemistry?
First of all, I don't think Matthew has a problem connecting with his teammates. And when you're in a football building, especially when training camp starts, you go down to Irvine. I mean, it's the locker room small, and you're squished in there, and it's a very intimate workplace, and probably as intimate and if you listen to Hall of Fame speeches, right, a lot of times the players will not necessarily mention missing games or things like that. They'll say they miss the relationships that are built in those locker rooms and in and around the locker rooms, like even with equipment people. But every year is different. Each team is different, and even when there is continuity, there are probably different phases of life. As an example, there could be, you draft a player, and that player goes from someone who's single to someone who's married to someone who now has little kids, and life just changes in different phases, and who you hang out with and things like that within the locker room is probably different depending on where you're at in that life. But at the end of the day, we definitely have some ways that we like to be intentional about, engineering, right, a cohesive collective, because that chemistry is very important, especially in a 32 team league when it's hard to out talent people. It's hard to out healthy people. It's hard to out scheme people. So that all the variables, chemistry being one of them, is very important to try to give you that edge in that season.
Jordan.
Hey, Les.
How's it going?
Well, thank you. Hope you're well as well. Wondered if you could maybe pull back the curtain a little bit more on you guys' process for identifying offensive linemen and deciding who fits where, inclusive to, you alluded to it with your answer about the Dotson trade, schematic changes that are happening and unfolding now here, and how you continue to, if you continue to possibly troubleshoot that process and sort of self-correct when certain situations like Logan Bruss and everything he went through occur.
Yeah, that really good question. Probably, I mean, to keep it simple, to answer you simple, I think our formula, hey, can an offensive line get in the way and stay in the way? And you're right, he's got to somehow, right, again, within the scheme, know where he needs to go to stay in the way, and can he get there before the defender can get there, and then can he keep the defender from going where the defender wants to go? Now, within that, yeah, we've had some changes within the scheme and a little bit from our normal wide zone. So we've seen this year, we tilted a little bit bigger, wider, but that could also be for anchor. You have a pocket passer. It's nice for a pocket passer to let's call it, have a little more space right up the middle, and then try to let those speed rushers kind of run around you and things like that. But you're always trying to find quality linemen. Tough to do. because every team is trying to find those. And then let's think about it, is probably 5 starting offensive linemen. Probably that's the most of any position. You could say maybe DBs have 5 when there's a nickel, things like that. Very rarely is there 5 defensive linemen on line scrimmage. So it's a position that's hard to find, and we're always trying to figure out ways to identify good ones. Once we identify, develop them. And again, in Dotson's case, it's nice having someone with experience who started. But hey, we'll definitely go out, and like last year, I think there was a lot of bad luck on that OL, but it allowed us to go poach Zach Thomas off of Chicago's practice squad, who they probably drafted in the 6th round. And then we worked to develop him, and he's just not experienced yet in terms of playing in real games.
You guys used I guess what people would refer to as like a premium pick or a higher round pick on Steve Avila this year. And certainly, you know, his ability to factor in as a day one starter seems significant. And as you guys move forward, and you potentially, as of now, have potentially more, you know, upper round premium picks, does that change your scouting and development process? And what are those conversations like as you guys figure out how to continue to evolve as your game changes?
I think going into the scouting part, you definitely want to, anytime you go to, let's call it, like you said, a premium pick, you definitely probably, when you go to make that pick, there's probably a pot of players at a lot of different positions that I've always said is subjectively our best on the board. You always laugh when you say best available. That's very subjective. And when you go to Wikipedia and look at past drafts, it's easy to see that it's very subjective, and it's hard to predict. But so I don't think it's necessarily a position, but I think we can definitely run enough analytics to know that, okay, whatever success model you have, the earlier pick you OL, maybe the better chance of you having a successful model at some positions, maybe centers, different things like that. You can always find players all over the draft, but it's definitely an element of a bell curve where the earlier you pick a player, the better chance of success you have, depending on your success model. And OL is one of them.
And then just real quick, sorry, last one for me on this. You know, there was a lot of excitement when you guys picked Logan, and I remember, you know, Sean saying his expectation that he would start at guard like right away or compete for that spot right away. And there was a ton of excitement around the pick. So when something like this happens, and obviously some of it is circumstantial as well from what happened to him last year.
Right.
But what lessons do you take from something like this? Obviously, you don't want to then be cutting a player you seem to value so highly the year after drafting him.
Yeah, sometimes when you just take an individual case like that, there's probably not enough, because it's basically a case of one. Most analytics will tell you that's a tough place to. It's better for us to learn lessons with a bigger set of data than one, but we will always, try to go back and regress, doing a regression analysis of from the time we scouted him to now, and see what we didn't do well organizationally, and maybe what he didn't do well. And also there's times there's bad luck involved. Those luck events do play. And in his case was probably the ACL and setting him back, and not necessarily having the reps that some of the other players may have gotten, in his draft class from last year. But we'll try to do that. A lot of times it's hard to learn in a one data set situation.
Thank you.
Sam.
Hey, Les.
Hey, Sam.
How are you? I wonder if you saw or heard the comments from Bill Belichick yesterday when he was talking about sort of the buy now, pay later philosophy, and he specifically referenced the Rams and said that you can win like that temporarily, but not in a sustained way. You guys have had a lot of success over the last 6 years, but I wonder what your philosophy is and your thoughts on what he said.
I didn't hear that, but obviously he's got a lot of wisdom. I think there's definitely some truth in what he's saying, in that we're always going to try to sustain, right, winning as I would use the word as consistent as possible. But there's gonna probably be phases of your team where there's going to be ebbs and flows through it. And yes, if you do some creative things like we did with the cap, there's no secret at some point you have to, if you want to call it, pay that debt off. But there's also ways to maneuver within the roster is when you have younger players and things like that you can still compete with some of that dead money. So there's a lot of truth into what he says. But I think a lot of teams have ebbs and flows. Some of the better ones, I think I always use the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've been a quality, consistent winner, and some years maybe let's call it, in terms of wins and losses, a little better than others. But they've been able to, even when they did dip closer to 500, things like that, they were able to, right, get back on track pretty quickly.
Great. Thank you.
Andrew.
Les, thanks for doing this. Just one for me. You guys pretty much played the sidelines in free agency, but you've made a couple signings later in the offseason, now a trade. Obviously got the kicker situation to resolve, but beyond that, is there any area where you kind of have an eye out for kind of late stage moves to improve the team?
Yeah, that I think I can say realistically, yesterday's waiver, there was a lot of names that hit the wire. It's probably the one last time where there's going to be that many names. Now, a lot of those names will go to practice squads. So over the course of the next 17 weeks, there's probably a lot less ops to really improve your team, unless, something at the trade deadline, or if it's something that seems a little minor at the time, like a poach of a Zach Thomas last year. When does that come to fruition and help you, and does it ever help you? So I think we're getting to that stage in the NFL calendar where it's we'll have a limited more options on really improving the team, unless there's one or two players at the trade deadline. So a lot of times what we like to do is kind of figure out where we're at, who we are. And at that point, who we are is very important. And that'll be our model that we base any moves then or not on. And that's where we're at. But we gotta get there first. We're not there yet. We're about to get real here in a week, I guess it'd be not this weekend, but the next.
Thank you.
We'll wrap up with you, Dan.
Hey, Les, piggybacking off that last answer, is that basically saying you're not in the market for a more experienced outside linebacker?
I would say I could simply say, oh yeah, we'll definitely take a really good, experienced outside linebacker, right? You'd probably always be in the market for that. Now, their availability, I bet, is a lot. Our wishes for that is greater than their availability, usually this time of year. But that'd be an interesting analytics study, Dan, if we take all the OLBs who are on the street today and then see how they do from this point forward. So, but I think you get what I'm saying. But we would, again, always take a experienced outside linebacker who can affect the game either on the line of scrimmage in the run game or the passer.
But given the composition of the position after the moves you made yesterday, it's Michael's, he's played, but it's been D-line previously to this, and the rest of the guys are rookies. So just how comfortable are you with the experience level that?
Well, we're very comfortable with that. I mean, in Michael's case, he might have, even from an OLB standpoint, and like you said, making the move from inside IDL to OLB might have led our outside linebackers in sacks last year, getting that up. So there is, I would say, some evidence that, okay, Michael, even though he's not a household name, okay, wait a minute, he has a chance to, he's done some things, he's put some things on tape, things you can measure that are objective and not just subjective. that he can, let's call it, be greater than maybe his reputation as a player to date. Same with the young players. Rookies have to come in. They probably have a higher, a better reputation, at their university or college that they played at last year than they do in the NFL. Yeah, but it's on, now it's their time to show that their skill set can translate to our league, and it takes time. But that's why we went out and drafted those players. We definitely liked what they brought to the table. They're just less experienced than some.